Metamorpho, the Element Man. While a bit more obscure to the mainstream audience, the character has endured for decades, and it's enjoyed a decent amount of popularity in nerd circles and among certain creators. He has been adapted many times, and time of recording has been cast into James Gunn's Superman Legacy film to be portrayed by Anthony Carrigan. We'll see how that goes. As always, trust nothing until it's in your hands, or until you're seeing it with your own eyes. However, whatever happens, Metamorpho has proven to be a character that stood the test of time. In 2023, he was featured in a storyline in Mark Waid and Dan Mora's World's Finest, and his origin was retold, or rather recapped, and it hasn't really changed since he debuted in the 1960s. So what is it about Rex Mason that has led the character to endure? Because on the surface there are many reasons why it may look like the character wouldn't. The design is quite out there, the original tropes are a bit from a bygone era, and yet it works, and it worked from the beginning. We're going to take a look at why here on Casually Comics. First, we need to establish just who is Metamorpho and how did he come into being. Metamorpho debuted in The Brave and the Bold number 57, this in 1965. He was created by Bob Haney and Ramona Fradon, the latter of whom they coaxed back from maternity leave to work on the character. Bob Haney had been specifically tasked with designing the character based on the successes of some other teams, namely the Metal Men and the Doom Patrol, and just the types of characters there, just the kind of outlandish, more adventuring, kind of sci-fi-ish. There were pulp elements floating around them rather than just straight up superhero tropes. There was a bit of a bygone flair. And it is said that Metamorpho started out as a bit of a parody of some of these tropes, and that can be seen in the first issue, 57, which is Metamorpho's origin. But parody does not have to mean over the top or irreverent, and that tends to be what people think of when they think of that word. But parodies can be more subtle, and they can also come from a place of great love that can roast but also celebrate, which is more of what you have going on with Rex Mason's debut. Rex Mason is an adventurer employed by the power-hungry and morally questionable Simon Stagg, who he knows is this way, and it's highlighted in visual cues like him having henchmen who show up dressed like this in all black cult-like executioner ensembles. This one they need to summon Rex for his next assignment. So you have these outlandish elements that are meant to be played tongue-in-cheek, just the way that they exposit some of what's gone on. But they work because the main core story is also compelling enough that it can play itself more seriously and still stand. The parody doesn't overtake the core narrative, essentially. Now Rex is your standard devil-may-care adventurer who plays by his own rules. Like how he doesn't actually complete the missions that Stagg sets out for him, because he knows that he shouldn't, because he knows Stagg is questionable, and yet Stagg keeps employing him and he keeps doing them. Or rather, kinda sorta doing them, because he's the best, he's a loose cannon, he gets results but he doesn't deliver them. For example, in this first story, he avoided giving him a shrinking agent, and there's a whole little plot where he pretends he did because he makes a miniature doll version of himself, and the press is just like, oh, that's Rex, playing all these tricks. Now Rex is in love and in a relationship with Stagg's daughter, Sapphire Stagg, and wants to marry her, which Stagg of course does not approve of, for reasons. Now our other main player introduced in this is Java, a reanimated caveman who Rex found and brought back to Stagg, who not only revived him but imbued him with intelligence. Old Mr. Million Simon Stagg, brilliant scientist and tycoon, who loves only power, has already heard about it. This is about him pretending to be a doll. For in a great mansion near the city limits.
I warned you, Master. I warned you Masons not to be trusted. Look,
you're always warning me, Java. Giving you higher intelligence has made you think you know more than I. See, there's like a wordplay going on there. It's appreciated and noted. Then the next panel gets a little creepy.
The secret video camera in my daughter Sapphire's car. It's getting a very clear picture today. Look, it's Mason making love to her. Oh, I can't stand to watch.
I think there's a time to turn off the spy gear in the car. How did we get away with actually saying that he's making love to her? Code, where are you? So Java hates Rex because Sapphire loves Rex, and Java likes Sapphire and feels that she would love him if she could see past his ugliness and if stupid, handsome Rex Mason wasn't there. So his jealousy is gonna grow even more profound when even after the metamorphosis into Metamorpho, Sapphire still loves and supports Rex. It wasn't about him having a Cro-Magnon forehead after all. Now Stagg gets tired of Rex disobeying him, so sends him on a mission to find the Orb of Ra, which he isn't meant to return from, and he's sending Java along to make sure. Also, let's take a moment to note and appreciate Stagg's over-the-top pet jaguar. No, Rex, please stay. I've got a premonition that something horrible will happen to you. I promise to come back, your same old ever-loving Rex, just a million richer. Adios, sweetheart. As the plane taxis away. Why have you done this to me, father? Whatever can you mean, dear daughter? This mission will make you rich, independent. He'll be able to marry you. You should be thanking me. After all, how can you know that it'll be years before you ever see Mason again?
Java will see to that.
I like that even though he's planning to have Rex abandoned at a pyramid, he's still confident enough that Rex will make it back. It's just gonna take him a while. But this is a little code thing. They can't say they're flat out gonna kill him. He'll totally be able to survive that giant trek across the desert. He'll be fine. The mission, as you can imagine, does not go well for Rex. They do find the orb, which is fashioned from a piece of meteorite, but Java knocks him out and leaves him in the pyramid while taking the orb of Ra and the scepter, hopefully leaving Rex to die, but we're just gonna pretend that he'll show up later. But Rex instead stumbles upon the giant remainder of the meteorite that is active in some way, and it regularly heats the pyramid to unsurvivable temperatures. So he takes a pill that Stag gave him in case he ever felt near death. I don't know why Stag gave that to him, it sounds really questionable, but he takes it because what has he got to lose? And something about taking that pill and also the meteorite and the energy, it transforms him into Metamorpho, the Element Man. I keep wanting to say Elephant Man, it almost keeps slipping out. Also, he figures out how to use his powers so quickly, but instinctively a strange thought occurs in his confused brain, and all at once, I'm changing into a gaseous form. And again, heeding the instinct he barely comprehends, I'm escaping between the stones as a jet of gas. Now, Rex, of course, is very upset about this transformation. I mean, look at him, he wants vengeance. But instead, he gets himself into an impasse. The Orb of Ra, which Stag now has, for some reason weakens Rex, because it does. You need to have a weakness when you have this many powers. Now, of course, Java gave the orb to Stag because he was hoping that he would use it to make him handsome, so that Sapphire would love him, but that didn't end up happening. So since Rex can't attack Stag, and Stag feels that, well, he can't really get rid of Mason because of all the powers he has, they decide that they're gonna kind of work together. He tells him that he'll find a cure for his condition, even though he thinks his condition is mad cool because he can survive anything. He's just testing him by seeing if he can injure him by throwing acid at him and all kinds of other things.
You're a fool, Mason. In this element state, you've got fantastic powers. Powers men have dreamed of since time began.
I mean, the power to transmute materials into pretty much anything, maybe. Looking like that, probably not. Sure, if they were power mad creeps like you, Stag, I'm not. I just want to be plain Rex Mason and marry Sapphire. He was not plain Rex Mason, he was devil may care handsome Rex Mason. That reminds me, Sapphire, I've got to talk with her if she doesn't wake up screaming at the sight of me. I mean, in all fairness, Sapphire did faint when she first saw him, but it just took her a minute. It was a lot, then she got over it. She needed a moment to adjust, and that's fine. It's a big change. Sapphire, who still loves Rex and decides to stand by him, inspires him to use his newfound abilities to do good. Her faith and love help him decide to make the best out of the situation, even though he's still not thrilled about it, and he still feels a bit tied to her father, who promises that he can cure him. And the very next issue, they have an actual adventure for Metamorpho, and you see him fight a mad scientist. Very fun. Now, Metamorpho proved popular as a character, and he was very quickly given his own solo series, which was admittedly short-lived. It lasted for 17 issues. But why did he take off? Fraden's art goes a long way to not only making all of the action feel compelling and the character designs look distinct, but making a design that should be ludicrous come together in a cohesive way. And her art renders some of the power sequences quite compelling, even dangerous or scary, and definitely cool. The relationships between characters, while very tropey and played that way, at the base level are intriguing, and you have these very well-defined conflicts between the characters with lots of ways to play with them. Java and his desire to be handsome and loved and being misjudged because of his appearance. Sapphire, torn between love for her father and Rex, not able to fully see her father the way that all the others can. Rex, once a throw costumes the Wind Maverick, now permanently altered and shaken as a result, willing to go to some pretty extreme lengths in hopes of regaining what he'd lost. Metamorpho is one of those transformed characters who can't go back to his original form. He has to stay looking like that. He can pull in disguises and other things, but when he goes to bed, he looks like Metamorpho, not like Rex, and that's something he has to contend with. This is also exacerbated by the fact that even though he has extraordinary powers, he was someone who looked down upon freaks, as he called them, like Java, and now he himself feels that he has become one by his own estimation. Now, despite the fact that the stories take on a very playful and fun tone, the events inside are still serious. Betrayal and manipulation run rampant, and the concept can very easily be interpreted and played seriously and work just as well. So it proves to be as versatile as the main hero's power set. It's not breaking the character or the premise to go dark, or do a mystery, or do something more adventure-based, or something more sci-fi. You have lots of options, and that can make it fun not only for the readers, but for the creators. And also visually, because of his power set, you can really do pretty much anything. And that can lead to a lot of fun, both script-wise and art-wise. And if you find people who can marry those two together, you can come up with something really brilliant. For the creatively minded, this character is a goldmine. As mentioned, Metamorpho would spin off quite quickly into his own series under the same creative team, starting in 1965, the same year he debuted, and running until 1968. His adventures were eclectic and exciting, and they played in that juncture where sci-fi and adventure meet. Not only was Metamorpho himself interesting, but his supports came off as well-defined and the dynamics delivered. And there was drama, and the series felt more like a serial than a standalone because the events and the characters' relationships built upon each other as you kept reading. There were questions as to whether Stagg was actually trying to cure him or not, which we the reader knew that he wasn't, but Rex wasn't sure about that. There was the question of would Java ever succeed in getting affection from Sapphire? Would Sapphire stay loyal to Rex? Was Metamorpho truly invulnerable? The parody tone very much remained throughout most of this solo series. You had villains like Achilles heel, do you get it? Cha-Cha Chavez. But while outlandish, these adventures were still solidly structured and entertaining to read. There was even talk of adapting Metamorpho early on. This at Filmation because of the success of the Superman/Aquaman Adventure Hour. Sorry, Superman/Aquaman Hour of Adventure. They were looking for more heroes to play with, so they commissioned the pilot in 1968. It didn't end up being used because CBS got the rights to Batman, which they decided to go with because Batman was really having a boom in popularity thanks to the 1966 live-action series. But Metamorpho was in the running, and that's worth noting. Now, by the end of the series in issues 16 and 17, they were looking to change up the formula. You had Sapphire marry someone else, and Metamorpho going off to fight a new big bad. But the series was cancelled, and he wouldn't reappear until 1972, in a kind of catch-up feature in The Brave and the Bold 101, once more by Haney, but this time with art by Jim Aparo, who would end up working Metamorpho again years later in The Outsiders. Then Metamorpho would end up as a backup in Action Comics, and they would kind of drop the new direction that his own series had been headed in and go back to more classic style adventures for him, and the more standard relationship between him and his supports. A firm fondness for Metamorpho had been fostered, largely through the love and persistence of those who had created him. Haney and Fraden would come back together for a one-shot issue in 1975, and Fraden reminisces lovingly about the entire collaboration. She stated, "I think we both felt that Metamorpho was our baby. I never had an experience like I had working with Bob Haney on Metamorpho. It was like our minds were in perfect sync. It was one of those wonderful collaborations that doesn't happen very often." One of the true tests of a character's staying power is just that. Do they stick around? Some characters pop up and are super popular for a period of time, either because they're tapping into something cultural, or they're just resonating with the audience at the time, or they have a creator who's really behind them for a bit. But once one of those things changes, sometimes they just fade into obscurity. But Metamorpho and his lore managed to live past the dedication of his creators and past the period he was created in. He made an impression and stuck around, and he would just become more and more entrenched in the DC universe. He would end up a core member of the Outsiders starting in the 80s. And he was one of the establishing characters of the roster at that time, because a lot of those characters were new, except for him, Black Lightning, and of course Batman, but he would leave later on. Metamorpho would seemingly die a couple of times, but each time he would come back. He seems to be the type of character who some creators just really enjoy working with him. He would have an entire dedicated episode in the DCEU Justice League series where they would rework some of the elements of his origin, but the spirit and theme remained the same. He would make it over to the New 52 in comics without missing a beat. Same backstory, just hitting the ground running. And while he isn't always at the forefront, he is a character people return to and give solid arcs to. He would, for example, end up as a key part of the Terrific series during the Rebirth era, and many of the classic elements were still there. Metamorpho has a very solid foundation, and that is part of the reason he has managed to stand that test of time. Sometimes you get it right out of the gate. He's a character who can be translated to many tones. He can work either by himself inside of his own little universe, or with other characters. Now, because of his malleable power set, you can fit him into many different situations. His backstory translates well and can be made interesting for modern/newer readers, as it was in World's Finest, which also reinforced that you can make his design both very appealing and terrifying. The strength of such a seemingly nonsensical design cannot be understated. It stays with you. You remember Metamorpho, but it's just on the right side of making sense so it doesn't veer into something like Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man, or something that can just come across as from a bygone era bit like Composite Superman. I do have some mild concerns about how it will translate into a live action setting. It's the kind of thing that could rely heavily on special effects, and depending upon how those go, that could go very awry, but we'll see. Time of recording. Hopefully it's the future and it went amazing. Metamorpho may not be a huge household name yet, but he left enough of an impression on people to want to bring him forward, and every time he does appear, he does the same for new fans. His older appearances are still very readable, minus some stereotyping, which miles may vary on how much that does or doesn't bother you, and some of it is tongue-in-cheek, added for parody value, but without full context of that or some of the tropes in play, and the genre is what was popular at the time, some of that may be a bit lost. It may be less obvious than it was back reading it in 1965. Sometimes things that are purposely trying to be camp or funny get lost in translation for newer readers or viewers. This if it's not a full-blown or over-the-top spoof. For example, some don't know the 66 Batman series was being extra campy on purpose, and just assume that Batman was that silly and that's what people wanted to see, and not that part of that was playing it up. Although there was some bleed back from that into the comics, it's fascinating. As for Rex Mason, things just came together for him. Strong creators with a clear concept, sharp execution both in story and design, a memorable look and enduring backstory, with themes many can relate to both on the negative and aspirational levels, from betrayal to loyalty. He's the kind of character who can fit into most any story and can stand on a team or on his own inside his own story structure and supports. While he may not be constantly in the limelight, it seems for those who want him, there is an enduring place out there for Metamorpho. This across mediums. Metamorpho for all. But those are just my thoughts and I want to hear yours. What do you think of Metamorpho? Had you heard of him? Are you familiar with him? Do you like him? Do you disagree with everything I said entirely? I want to hear it all down below. While you're down there, please do all YouTube things like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Also, third video on Newstead, how do we feel? I think the lighting and everything, we're getting there. It's happening. Isn't it slowly happening? Let me know what you think. Bye-bye.